Welcome everyone to today's Datameer workshop. Just some logistical items. Everyone will be muted for the duration of the workshop. There is a Q&A panel that you'll see in the bottom of your Zoom window. Feel free to click on that if you have any questions during the session, and we'll be answering them as we go along. So to go into the agenda, first we'll do an overview and demonstration of the Datameer cloud product. We'll spend about 15 minutes on that, on the total overview and a product run through, and then we'll do the user workshop. We'll spend about 35 minutes or so, and we'll have you actually build out a use case in Datameer. And step by step, and I'll be going through it on my screen share, and then you'll be able to follow along with an actual instance of Datameer. I think everyone received an email that contained a document, a PDF document, and that'll be the exact steps that we'll be walking through. Feel free to follow along. However, you always have that reference there as a backup. Contains everything that we'll walk through. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps, how you can start your own Datameer trials and connect to your own Snowflake instance and build out your own use cases. So again, that's the rough agenda that will follow. And like I said, feel free to use that Q&A panel to ask questions as we go along. Okay, a couple slides overview. This is what we actually hear from our customers. I'll just pause for a couple seconds so you can, read a few of these. I think the general notion is that with the nature of analytics, it's very iterative and ad hoc in nature. So that in analytics, if you see a dashboard, requirements, questions always change. So those iterations between asking a new question and receiving an analytical insight is usually a long, long iteration there. So these are just some of the problems that we're seeing. Long cycles. We're making too many copies of the data. We're spending too much time trying to find the applicable data sets. So Datameer aims to address many of these, all of these pain points. What is Datameer? So Datameer is a purpose-built solution for cloud data warehouse, and in this case, Snowflake. Meaning, Datameer is offered as a service to do data discovery, preparation, and analytics on your Snowflake cloud data warehouse instance. A couple of facets. One is the ability to search and discover your assets. So using Datameer, you can go in and discover the assets that you have using our semantic layer. So we have a semantic layer that does and holds descriptions, tags, catalog, attributes, things like that to allow you to go in and search and discover assets in your Snowflake inventory. Second is prepare and analyze. As you're about to walk through yourselves, we have a no-code, low-code interface, very easy to use to do data discovery, data preparation, data curation, and analyze your data as well. Again, point and click. You can use low-code. We have a low-code formula-based wizard interface, and then you can always use SQL as well, and you can mix them all together and have a combination of that to achieve the desired use case. And then finally, when you're done, when you have your transformations, you can then document and enrich those with tags, descriptions, attributes, and those goes back into the inventory of assets to be consumed by other users. So you're not working in silos or reinventing the wheel. Everything goes back into the catalog of assets. And then finally, as you'll do at the end of the exercise, you're actually going to deploy your transformations to Snowflake as materialized tables or views containing SQL. So that's really the endpoint, is to deploy your transformations, like I said, as tables or views. And last slide here before we get into the demo. This is just the typical, what I was alluding to before with those pain points. This is the typical process before Datameer. So I have a enterprise dashboard. I have a business question. Data engineering has to then understand that question, understand my requirements. They typically have to go and do some preparation transformation involving SQL coding. And then the results come back to me as an analyst. And then I really validate, is this what I was looking for? Yes, great. Then I can visualize and then consume. Otherwise, it might not be. So then we have to refine requirements and go through that iteration all over again. And this is typically lengthy, weeks in time for each iteration. So it's very, like I said, analytics is very iterative in nature. So we need to greatly reduce these iterations. This is where Datameer comes in. Using Datameer, the business analyst can do self-service prototyping to go in and do discovery and transform and prepare and analyze all themselves using the no-code, low-code interface. So greatly reducing those cycles. And then once we've reached, hey, this is the transformation, these are the results I need, then they can take that and Datameer generates SQL automatically. They can hand that SQL off to data engineering to productionalize, or like I said, productionalize themselves using our deployment and deployment capabilities within Snowflake. A lot of times they'll just deploy it to Snowflake, consume through their BI tools, and then as it becomes finalized, then data engineering can take SQL and then go to Productionalize Dashboard. So greatly reducing that time to insight. And this is what we're about to see. So we'll go through a quick demonstration of that for a few minutes, and then we'll jump into the workshop. So like I said, we'll just jump straight in and do a demo. Let's start with, like I said, the Operationalize Dashboard. And I'm playing the role of an analyst, BI user. And here I've got a financial use case built out. I can see loans built up by, sales channel, by product, distribution, other demographics. But the nature of analytics is questions always change. So let's say I've got a new question. I'm interested in seeing, let's say, the average interest rate by annual income divided up into, $20,000 bins. What's the average annual income by loan status? This question isn't evident on the dashboard. And like I said, I might have to go through a long iterative cycle through data engineering to get to, what could be the endpoint. But hey, let's use Datameer to prototype that out, validate what we're doing, and get to those insights quickly. So jumping into Datameer. So Datameer itself is a browser-based UI, and it's offered as a service. So hopefully all of our attendees after this can go and instantiate their own instances of Datameer. Couple of clicks, you're up and going. We host the application, and then you would point to your Snowflake, and then we would introspect all of your Snowflake assets, and that's what I've got here. Here's all my Snowflake tables and views. So really the first aspect is discovery. What do I have inside of my Snowflake inventory? So I can browse through them like you're seeing here. We also have, like I said, a semantic layer containing custom attributes, tags, descriptions, things like that. And I can search by those. I can search by these facets and say, show me the tables and views that are associated with the finance department or marketing and so forth. We also have a Google-like search. So I can enter a keyword and that will search all of the technical and semantic metadata that we've got in our inventory of assets. This is a financial, like I said, use case, interested in interest rate by annual income. This is an asset of interest. So let's go ahead and explore this a little bit more. And here's the column level descriptions. So we bring that into context so I can derive what these columns are, what they mean. We have a collaborative aspect, so users can leave comments around particular tables. We have this concept of status, so I could see if an asset is, has it just been loaded? Is it raw? Does it need to be curated or prepared? In this case, I can see it's vetted and certified. Great. Diving deeper in, okay, here's a more rich description. We have a glossary. I can look up and get definitions of glossary terms. And there's those tags and custom attributes. This is a table that I would like to discover and transform. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to a new project. And we will call that new project loans. And we click OK. And that will launch me into a Datameer project and workspace. And so there's my personal loans table. On the right here, we bring up those the semantic aspects, descriptions, tags, and here's a preview of the data. So as we're interacting with the data and we apply transformations, we always apply those and we can see interactively how that's influencing the data. And there's where we get the preview. We have data profiling. So I can jump in and I can do profiling of the data. For example, annual income. That's how I want to roll up and see how the interest rate is influenced. And so I can get and do the full profiling on that column, the min, the max, the average, the number of unique values. And so here I could see I've got some data skew. So all of my records are between the 0 and let's say $200,000 to $300,000 mark. I'm going to reduce that skew. And let's remove everything above the 2 million mark. So to do that, I'll start with my low code filtering. So using my no code transformations. So if I click on this green plus sign, this is our context menu of our no code transformation, kind of the most common operations that analysts would do. And I'm going to go ahead and apply a filter and just say, let's apply a filter where my annual income is, say, less than, and we'll say $2 million. Let's see. And we'll go ahead and hit apply. And once we hit apply there, then we can go ahead and recalculate our annual income and redo the profiling. And then we can see a better distribution of the data, right? There's not as many outliers or data skew. Going into some other transformative operations, let's say we want to derive a new column. The zip code here, they've hashed out the last 2 numbers of that zip code. Let's say I want to derive a new column that just contains the first 3 numbers. So what I can do is add another step to my recipe, and I can add a column extraction, and I can choose my source column, which is zip, and I'm going to derive a new column and just take the first 3 numbers of that and go, so kind of a wizard-led UI, right? To say, you know, which substring do you want and extract that into a new column. And there's the column that we just derived right there. Finally, maybe we can take a look at our formula builder. So here is for, you know, maybe the power users and they want to apply some Snowflake functions directly. So on the right here, we've got all of the every Snowflake function. It's documented. We can see the method signature. And we can use whether it's a Snowflake function or a UDF. And we've got a rich editor here. So as I type, the function will pop up and then I can enter in the parameters. And what's nice is if I have, you know, a lot of formulas, I don't have to embed them in, you know, a massive SQL statement, right? I can operate in those on a columnar basis. So I can apply another function and embed those a little bit. Let's say I want to concat maybe some text, and as I type, the column, you know, it'll do IntelliSense and give me the available columns that I have to operate on. So like I said, a nice rich formula editor there. There I've just derived a new field that combines 2 and takes a substring of 1. Go ahead and hit apply, and then that will add that step to within my recipe. Again, so I can see exactly how this view here was derived. And here's the magic behind the scenes. I can always see the SQL that was generated there. So at any point, you know, I could see what was generated behind the scenes. I'm going to bring in another table for a join here. So I'm going to join in that zip coordinates table. That is geolocation information with my personal loans data set. Joining is also very easy in Databear. So bringing up that context menu, I'm going to elect to join. And I'm going to select the zip code table and click Get Suggestions. So this is where we look at both tables and we analyze the columns and we give you suggestions. Hey, we're finding that these 2 are similar. you may want to join on these columns. And we give you scores so that we can give you the most relevant columns first, making it nice and easy to, select which columns that you want to join on, as well as debug the join. You could see which rows did not match. You could see which rows did match and how many times those keys match. Because, a lot of times you may explode your join out, you may have no rows, so that allows you to actually debug and design your join. And then visually document it. So you could see how we visually documented and updated our lineage flow with that join. Now we can do a little bit of exploration. So we did some data discovery, some curation and preparation, and we can also explore. And this brings that BI-like functionality into Snowflake, into Datameer for discovery, so that I can interact with the data set and gain insights without necessarily having to export it, to a BI tool, gain those insights, validate my use case, and then I can deploy and consume with data science or BI tools. And here I'm going to aggregate because I do want to get to the interest rate by annual income. So I'm going to say, let's choose the annual income column. Let's divide that up into $20,000 bins. And secondly, let's also have my second dimension be the loan status. And then the interest rate is the metric that I want to roll up on and do the average interest rate there. So I hit OK. That will convert that to SQL and then show me the results of that. We're all visual learners, so we wanted to bring in visualizations within Datameer. So here I could say, oh, here's my validation. Here's my insight, right? Now I can see average interest rate, by the loan status and annual income. Now I've quickly validated, okay, now I've got the right data, I've got the right results. Now I can go ahead and where do I go from here? Number of things. So where I can go is first to share them. I can download the data. I can download it as a CSV. I can email them out. So I can share my results, enter an email address, a description, and that will send my results out, or I can deploy to Snowflake as a table to be consumed in an enterprise dashboard, which is the example that I'll do now. So I'm going to click deploy to Snowflake and we'll do join. And then I pick which schema that I want to deploy that to. We'll go ahead and deploy that data set, and then that will now be materialized as a table. That's what's going on behind the scenes, is that we're instantiating a table, and then we are then materializing that table. And we can also materialize that as a view as well, so that if we wanted it to run live SQL every time, it will then materialize that as a view. But in my case, we did that as a table. And then now that I have that, I can schedule that to run at specified intervals. So if I want to run that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and have that table refreshed, that's very easily done. And that's using Snowflake's native tasking behind the scenes. So that is a quick run through. So we saw a day in the life of an analyst that was challenged with a new business question. And having to answer that question, we did some self-service ad hoc prototyping, went in, discovered, prepared, curated, reached some insight. Oh, this is what I need, and then deploy to Snowflake. And then, like I said, we can always take that SQL that's generated, and if we wanted to productionalize that with a different vehicle, great. Well, now we've got SQL, requirements are very defined. Good to go. Okay. So now hopefully we can get everybody on the call to build a use case out themselves. While I describe a little bit of the use case, let's see, I will share the location. So I think everyone should have gotten the location in there. If you haven't, I will put it up on the screen. So this is the where you want to go right here. Kind of hard to see. Let me highlight that. Put it in presenting mode. There. So you want to go to workshop, and everyone should have received this in an email, but just to put it up on the screen, workshop.ue2-prod.datameer.cloud. We'll leave that up for a second. and give everyone a chance to bring this up inside of their browsers. Otherwise, you can refer to the email that you received, and then you won't have to type it all in. But just to display that so everybody has it. And then if you don't, you can always ask the question in the chat, and then we'll paste it in for you as well. But that's the location of where we're going to be doing the workshop. The goal of the workshop will be a loan finance use case. And what we're going to do is deploy a table to Snowflake in the end with the average interest rate by state. Let's see, that's the question that we have as analysts for the loan workshop use case is, hey, I want to compute the average interest rate by state. But to do that, again, you've got to discover what data that you have in Snowflake. You have to, profile it, prepare it, transform it, finally analyze, and then deploy. So we're going to reduce that long iteration with coding and handoffs to, hey, self-service prototyping. We can just jump in there and do it. One last time for the URL there. That's where we're going. And then we'll go ahead and sign into that instance. And I saw that there's a raised hand. So again, if you go ahead and post a question inside the chat panel. So there's a Q&A panel in there. And if you could just post your question in there, it'll be answered right away. Okay, so I'm going to, you're welcome to follow along. Again, you all have the reference documents, but I'm going to go ahead to that URL that I had mentioned. This is an instance of Datameer specifically for this workshop. Your login is going to be your email that you registered with. That's going to be your login. And then the password is Datameer training. With all lowercase. And let me put that up again so everyone has it. So that's the password, Datameer training. Username again is your email address. Password, Datameer training, all lowercase. And that is able to be referenced in the document as well. So I'm going to log in with my example username. My password is Datameer training, all lowercase. And I'm going to go ahead and sign into the instance. And this is what you should be seeing. So this is the Databear home screen. Couple of things to point out. So on the left side here, you'll see pretty soon some facets there that you can search on. We don't have anything in here yet. So this is where we'll access all of our projects, data sets, and schemas will be here. This is a nice empty instance, so a great sandbox for us to get started. And the first thing that we're going to do is click on the new project button. So this is the green button in the upper left-hand corner prominently. And we're going to go ahead and click that new project. And the name of the project is going to be loans _ and then I'm going to put in, if you could just put in your initials in there. Your initials, because we're all going to be using the same instance here. So if you could just put in your initials, that would be great. Project name _ initials, go ahead and hit OK. And then that will create our new project. And so a couple things to mention about the project, project workspace here is we've got all of the your schemas here on the left. So when you set up, Datameer will introspect all of your schemas, and then that's what you'll see there. And that's when you search the inventory of assets, you will see all of your databases and tables available. So in our example, if I expand this, so to expand, I click the little caret here. I'm going to expand DemoDB, and I'm going to expand the public schema. and then that will show us all of the available tables that are able to be used. And so these are the ones that we'll be using for our use case. This private DB workshop, that's actually where we're going to be writing tables to. So for the purposes of transformation and discovery, we're going to be using the tables under demo db/public. And so to add our first table to our workspace is going to be the loans table. And to add that, I can either drag that into my workspace or I can click the plus sign to the right of the loans table. So when I click the plus sign, that will bring the view into my project workspace. And so this is where I can begin discovering the data inside this table, as well as the profiling, as well as profiling the attributes within that table. So to see the actual data, I can click on preview, and then that will run SQL and show me a snippet of the table and how many rows I have. What's nice here is that if this were a very large table containing, 42 million rows, I can calculate and get the metrics, the statistics, the number of rows on the full data set inside of the table. I can click on columns that will show me the column names, and I can add in descriptions inside of this UI, bring in that semantic aspect, and then I can click profiling as well. So this is where I can profile individual columns. We don't profile everything up front because that would take a long time with wide tables. I have 18 columns. If we were profiling all of those at once, we'd be sitting watching spinning logos for a few minutes. So we found that really users are interested in targeting their profiling. So let's say I want to profile this column called subgrade. So there I can click on calculate for that, and then we'll calculate the individual profiling metrics for that column. And then I can see the number of values, the number of uniques, min, the max, the averages. So we've really worked to optimize the user experience around that and make it nice and fast and interactive. And I'll do another profiling, for example, on loan status. And so here is rolling up the loan status, what's fully paid, charged off, what is current. And so here's where we're going to use this distribution to do our first transformation. And so let's say I'm really only interested in the current loans. So what I can do then is to apply our first transformation by clicking on the green plus sign next to the loans data set here. So by clicking on the green plus sign, that will again bring up all of the most common transformative operations. And what I'm going to do is start with the filter. And once I select filter, I'm going to select the column, and I can select it in the drop down, or I can simply start typing. I'll type STA for status, and the column I'm interested in is the loan status column. And once that column is then selected, then I can choose the criteria that I would like to apply to that. So my criteria is going to be equals, and then the value is going to be current. And once I hit apply there, that will apply that, and I can do multiple criteria in there. Here I'm just going to do the individual loan status equals current, and then I can then apply that. And then I can validate, right? So very interactive. I can click on the data preview to see how that was applied, and I can scroll over to my loan status column, and you'll see all the values are then current. Or I can go back to the profiling metrics and do some further validation there. So again, do a transformation and then validate using the preview or the profiling. It looks like I've got another column in here. I want to transform that. If you look at this zip code column, I can see the last two numbers of that zip code are hashed out with X's. So I'd like to transform and derive a new column that only contained the first three numbers of that column name. So I'm going to go to the right here and add a step to my recipe. So when I click add to recipe, that will bring up again the list of the most common operations. And I'm going to bring up the extraction. So I want to extract from a column to derive to a new column. And then I'm presented with a wizard-led UI to specify what column I want and then what characters that I want to derive into the new column. So my source column, I can scroll through that, or I can choose to name, type it out. I'm going to choose the zip code column, and I can derive the new column name, which is just going to be zip. Zip there, that's what I want my column to be called. And then I'm going to say start with the first character and then do a length of 3. Again, nice wizard-led UI to see how we want the new column derived. I hit apply, and then that will apply the transformation, and then it will show me that new column there. So if I go down and scroll to the right here, I can see how that new column was derived, zip, containing the first 3 numbers. So those are our no-code operations, and we have many more in there, but I did want to show everyone an example of a low-code transformative operation. So if I click add to recipe again, I'm going to click that blue square there on the right, add to recipe. And then I'm going to select formula builder. So that will put us into where we can enter Datameer function, or sorry, Snowflake functions in there into our formula builder interface. And so on the right here, I've got all of these Snowflake functions that are documented there within. So I can easily get a reference of all the Snowflake functions and how they are used. I can also reference user-defined functions as well. So anything that's valid to be entered inside of my Snowflake UI editor, I can enter within this. And the nice thing is it's on a columnar basis. So if I had a lot of formulas, I don't have to embed those in some giant SQL statement. I can enter them on a column by column basis, much easier to enter and also maintain. So for example, let's do a formula on this loan ID column. And so in my formula editor, I'm going to highlight the column so that it's in green. And in my formula editor, I'm going to just type the name of the column called left. And as I type, we bring up the list of available functions. And so left is the function that I want. And when I select that, it will give you the signature, the method, how I call it and how I use it and what parameters that I want to pass. I'm just going to remove this text here. So if I just highlight and remove that, I'm going to keep the source loan ID. That is the reference to the column. And then I'm going to put comma, that is the separator. And then I say I want the left, say 4 characters of that column. And then I close it up with a closing parenthesis. And again, I can nest columns in here. I can use regular expressions. So really any analytical use case, Snowflake has hundreds of functions that I can reference here. Every one of them is supported. And there I can try my formula and then hit apply. And then that will actually apply the formula and show me the resultant transformation. I can derive columns in place as I am here, or I can add new columns by clicking on the plus sign. But here we'll just stay focused and just do one simple transformation with one single function. We also have a magic format button here. Not so applicable here because it's, it's a small formula, but you might have multiple lines here. And, as you're developing, it becomes unformatted. So nice, easy to format the code that you're working on. I go ahead and hit apply. And well, first I changed a little bit. So I'll hit apply over here. That will test it and validate it. So make sure that that little button there is grayed out so that you've already applied your formula. And then we'll click the green apply button. And when I click the green apply button, that will put us back to our main project flow. And the step was then added to our recipe for that particular node. And now again, here's the magic. I can always click SQL. So if I click the SQL tab here, this is everything that's generated behind the scenes. So again, using our simple point and click formula-based UI, I can quickly do ad hoc prototyping and discovery, and then get to my endpoint. Of course, I can always add SQL in. Maybe I want to write a quick SQL statement, so we have that ability there as well, and to combine the two. Now let's try a join. So we're going to bring in another table now. So we're going to bring in the zip code table. So if I go to my demo db/public schema, we have this zip code table over here, and I'm going to drag it. So I'm going to click and drag it into my workspace, and then that will add that data set to within my workspace. This contains the zip code and the associated geo coordinates, the associated latitude, longitude coordinates associated with the zip codes. I want to join those in, to my filtered data set here. So I'm going to highlight my filtered view, and I'm going to go to the plus sign, and I'm going to select to do a join. So we'll leave that up there for a second. So if everybody can click join, that will bring me to the join dialog. Very easy wizard assisted join interface here. So I'm going to select on the right here. So if I go all the way on the right side, there's this drop down here. I'm going to select the zip code table. And then I'm going to click get suggestions. So when I click get suggestions, we go out to both tables, and then we'll analyze, the column names, data types, and we'll actually run similarity metrics on the columns themselves so that I can get suggestions and scores. So here we give you suggestions. Hey, here's columns which we think might match, and here's the associated scores. Notice that the zip column is after we applied the transformation, so we removed those last two X's. So we gave it a higher score because it's a better match. And I find that in actually building use cases out with Datameer, these column suggestions are very helpful and right most of the time. So I don't have to go in and sift through the columns and find the join keys. Now I can click that blue zip box, and then that will select that column pair as my join. And then I can close the column suggestions box, and then I can validate my join, right? So first of all, there's a preview of the data. That's the result of the join. And then often you might ask, well, which rows didn't I not have matches for? So I can click on the unmatched rows, and I could see, oh, I had 320 rows from that side that didn't match, 346 rows that didn't match over there. I can click join keys, which records did match and how many times did they match. So there I could see that. And again, because a lot of times when you're doing joins, you may explode it out to some massive Cartesian product by accident and run up 100 Snowflake credits. Or maybe you'll have nothing coming out of your join because the keys are wrong or whatever it may be. This allows you to validate that very easily. The second value add that we're offering here is that we automatically switch back and forth between Snowflake's native sampling and the full data set. Let's say you're doing joins on tables that are hundreds of millions of rows. So when you're designing your join, we validate that on Snowflake's native sampling to allow first a fast interactive experience so that you can design the join on sampling transparently, validate, and then we would apply it to the full data set. So you're saving time, you're saving credits as well. No need to burn a bunch of credits when you're just when you're doing your design. So here I've got my join defined. I'm going to go ahead and click the green apply button, and then that will bring us back to our project flow, and then that will show us our updated flow. And now at this point, we've done some data preparation and curation, and now we want to get to our insight, which was average interest rate by state. So now we're going to build an aggregation. So we've got some analytical capabilities built into Datameer as well. So if I go back to my green plus sign, we have aggregates and pivots. We're going to do an aggregate, but we can also pivot. So, you know, if you're an Excel user, and what do all Excel users talk about constantly is pivoting, right? So instead of having to make copies of the data in Excel and build my pivot table, we can pivot straight away here within Datameer. We're going to do an aggregate. It's a little similar. So if everyone can select the aggregate option, and that will bring us to our design window. So here we want to define, well, what do I want to group by, and what's the measure that I want to calculate? So our group by, if I click the plus sign over here on the right-hand side, that will bring up the list of available columns to group by. And what we're going to do is we're going to group by the state. So if I scroll down towards the bottom here, the address state appears there, or again, I can always type ADDR, and that will bring up the column address state. I'm going to place a checkbox next to address state and then click apply. And this also is interactive. So once I click apply, that will show me the preview of that. So there's all of my unique states that I've got. Secondly, what I want to do is choose the measure. So if I click on the measure, the plus sign next to the measure of what I'm going to calculate is the interest rate. So I'm going to click on interest rate and then select apply there. And then that will be my measure. And then if I have this, see where it says sum, I can expand that out. And these are all the different calculations that I can then do based on that grouping. I'm going to select average because I want to do the average interest rate by the address state. So I'm going to go ahead and select average, and then that will compute the, again, average interest rate by the state. And then to return to our project flow, I'm going to go ahead and click apply. And then that will update my flow there. So here, very easily and visually, we can see that we've got the loans table, transformations, we did the join, and then finally we did the aggregation. And then again, we can always take back and take a look at the SQL that was generated for that. And we can always click on the preview and say, hey, this is the data that I need. Now I can deploy this, right? Now I want to productionalize, materialize this data set inside of my Snowflake instance so that I can then consume that with my dashboard, with my data science tools that are connecting to Snowflake. So hopefully everyone's at this point and we can then deploy. So if you click deploy to Snowflake, and what we want to do is select table first. So again, we could write this as a view, but we're going to go ahead and write this as a table. So we'll click table, and then the name of the table, because we're all going to be deploying to the same schema here. So again, if you could just do your underscore initials, that'd be great. And that way you'll have your own unique table name. And then where's the destination? So this will actually bring up the schemas that you have permissions to write to. So it's very nice because you won't see schemas that you won't be written to. So here is all the schemas that I have permissions to write to. And I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to deploy to my public database. So if everyone can do that as well, just expand the private DB workshop and select public. And your screen should look something like this. Table selected, your initials, maybe a little message, and just select that public schema in there. and then I'm going to click deploy data. So when I click deploy data, that will then deploy and materialize that transformation as a table. So we're running that SQL, we're creating the table, and then we are populating the contents of that table with the results of that query. I can already see 3 or 4 tables coming up. Awesome. It looks like good number of you were able to follow along. I keep seeing more. So that's great. Glad everyone's able to get to this point. And this is the extent of the actual exercise that I wanted to take everybody through. And now I'll just run through a few more items just to show you some of the other features and functions that we've got out there. I don't necessarily want everyone to do this from your instance. However, just wanted to show that we can schedule at this point, right? I've got a table that's just been materialized. Let's say I want to schedule this, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I can click enable schedule, and then I can select whatever I want. Weekly, daily. If I'm feeling particularly geeky, I can put in a custom cron pattern to refresh this table every Wednesday at 4:32 a.m. However, nice simple pick list if I want to do daily, weekly, or otherwise there. Click by time. That will actually be implemented as Snowflake native tasks. So again, 100% of this is natively utilizing Snowflake, and this is a nice, easy to use front end. So when we do implement scheduling, behind the scenes, we're creating store procedures and we're creating Snowflake tasks. So again, all that's happening behind the scenes. And then we keep a history, of course. So here I can see exactly, what SQL was deployed, and every time I redeploy, you'll see that history there, and I can dive into the execution history. But I did also want to highlight the exploration as well. So the goal I wanted to hopefully was to achieve that whole pipeline. Great. So now we've got our table deployed. But again, we can also interactively explore and do BI-like functionality within Datameer itself. So if you want to follow along in this, you can click on the join node right here. And then what we can do is click explore. So you'll see under the preview tab, this blue explore button. And if I click that, again, that will allow me to do in place filters, aggregates, and sorts. Again, to more interactively discover your data and explore it to further help you transform and deploy. That's where I'm kind of positioning this. So if I want to say, oh, well, I'm at this point, what if I want to roll up and see a quick, hey, what does it look like by, loan annual income interest rate? I can do that right here. So if I click on the aggregate, because that's what we're going to do, so I can aggregate this, and we could do the same example that I did in the demo. So again, let's say I want to explore and say, hey, what's the average interest rate by annual income? So if I click on annual income for my column, and then for the bins, that's how I want to divide it up, because the annual income is obviously a rolling numeric field. And then I can roll and choose, bins for this to be divided in. I like colors. Colors always look better than just a single blue color. So what I'm going to do is select the grade as my second dimension so that we can get some nice colors in there. And that will just do a stacked bar chart of annual income by grade. And then finally, I can select the measure. And so the measure is going to be the interest rate. So if I click on or type interest rate, and then again, I can choose the actual measure here. So if I go to average, that's what I want to do, is calculate average interest rate by annual income. And then I can click OK. And then that will generate the SQL and then show me the results. Great. And also explore visually. So if I then click on the visualization little icon here, I can click on that, and then that will actually show me a nice stacked bar chart as advertised with lots of colors. and then I can expand that bar chart. And like I said, instead of having to, every time I want to explore in a BI tool, I have to deploy and do that round trip. Well, hey, let's bring that discovery capability straight away to within Datameer, because this will really help me prepare and transform the data. Because like I said, it's very iterative. Oh, I see this result. Hey, they're all rolled up. Oh, I've got skew here. They're mostly less than 400,000. Hey, then I can apply a filter. That it's less than 400,000. For example, let's do just that. So I can collapse this, and let's say based on the insight that I've discovered here that most of the annual incomes are less than 400,000, I can then go and adjust for my transformation, and I could say add another step to this recipe, and I could say let's add another filter where my annual income is less than, and then I'll put 400,000. I hit apply and apply again, and then that will update my transformations. And you'll notice that my table here is yellow because this is the table that was actually deployed to Snowflake. So it's saying, hey, something has changed, data's changed. You may want to redeploy that. So to redeploy, I just click on that yellow tab and then I hit redeploy to Snowflake, put in a pertinent message, and then that will update my table with the new transformation. And then that will soon turn green when that is back in sync. There we go, nice and green, nice and back in sync. If that were an actual schema change, that would change to red, because that would be, I'd have to, maybe some dependent processes would depend on that, and I might break those processes. So color-coded changes in how we do them. It was just yellow because that's just a data change. But finally we can go back to our visual exploration here, and then I can just hit refresh, and then that will refresh that. Oh, now based on the insight that I've derived, everything's less than 400,000. Now I've got my newly designed bar chart right there, straight way to go. So hopefully everyone was able to complete a lot of the, or much of the use case. I can see some transformations, deploy tables, awesome. We've got a few minutes left. I could see some questions coming up in the Q&A panel. So I'm going to answer some of those publicly because I think these were only answered for the group. So here's a question: can we create our own visualizations, or will only the suggested ones be available? So the answer is you can utilize this visualization, this bar chart. We are going to add more. We're expanding the amount of visualizations. But again, I would just position this as for interactive discovery, not BI dashboards, right? This is so I can interactively discover and derive insights within Datameer during my transformation and preparation process. And then I would ultimately deploy a table to Snowflake so that I can consume the transformations and things like that with my enterprise BI dashboard. So think of these as a nice visual way to do discovery, so that I can further augment my transformative and preparation operations. Okay, let me go to other ways. So can the data be collected from tables, or is there a way to manually upload Excel files? So how do we get the data? So by and large, the data is in Snowflake. So typically customers have their ETL pipeline set up. All the data is in Snowflake. We would set up Datameer, and then you would see all of your introspected databases and tables there on the left side. But we do offer a way to add in data sets. So let's say I had a CSV or an Excel file on my desktop, and I wanted to create and materialize that as a Snowflake table. If you've ever done that, that's kind of a tedious process. And I don't say kind of lightly, it's very tedious. I have to go and design the schema for the table. I have to create the table, and then I have to make sure everything matches and upload that. And after lots of iterations and processes, you may have that table. So because of that, it's very tedious. We offer this UI where you can just drop in a file. And once you drop in a file in there, we will automatically materialize that as a Snowflake table. So very easy to add in CSVs or Excels from your desktop. And then once those are added as tables, then they'll appear straight away right here. And then I can integrate and join those into my data pipeline. So next question, is there a way to separate access for different projects, data across different account users? So we do have a collaborative ability within Datameer to each have your own projects, and I can share those out. So here I can manage the collaborators of this project so that the transformations that I apply are only visible to me, but I can invite other collaborators in and invite other users to also invite them into my project and allow them to see all of the transformations that I'm doing. So we have that fine-grained user group role framework. Next question, can a joint transformation be a part of a recipe? Answer is yes. So all of those transformations, these no code and low code, can either be documented as separate steps here. So I can have the filter, the extract documented as separate steps, or I can choose to have those in a recipe inside of an individual node. You'll find that you're mixing and matching those as you're going through. Maybe I want this set of steps associated with this node, and then I want others broken out. Again, it's really just visually documenting and depicting your particular process. But again, at any point, I can always go in, and when I click on SQL, this is all the SQL that's generated to generate the transformation for that particular node. One more question, does Datameer allow engineers to define and execute stored procedures? So what we've got, like you're seeing, is the point and click, no code, low code way to ultimately end up with your transformations. You can deploy to Snowflake, and that will actually create the stored procedure. However, you may have another productionalization process in place. Maybe you're using dbt or something else. So in that sense, yes, you can take the SQL, take my SQL, and then data engineering can take that and they can productionalize that, as a stored procedure. So really two different options there. We've got customers using Datameer in both different ways. They use us to deploy and maintain those deployments. And then you have Datameer coexisting, like with other development frameworks like dbt, where they can use those frameworks to productionalize. But the great thing is, hey, we could take the SQL and just hand that over instead of some loose requirements from business. Hey, data engineering, here's a SQL statement. And that's exactly what they want and need to really see the requirements. Okay, great questions. Very interactive, everyone. Thank you. And just to close out, I would like to encourage everyone to go to the trial. So what you're on now is a shared workshop instance with only Datameer sample data in it. However, if you want to try this out on your own Snowflake data, your own Snowflake instance, all you simply have to do is go to datameer.com/trial. Fill out real quick form. You can be up and going with your own instance of Datameer within the next 2 minutes. It's that fast to spin up an instance and start it off going. So I encourage everyone, start a trial, connect to your Snowflake. We've got a real simple, easy to consume licensing model. All that's on our website. And of course, feel free, there's an interactive chat widget within the trials. So feel free to reach out through that interactive chat widget with any questions or best practices. And we'll be happy to jump on that with you. So with that, we're at the hour, 1 minute past. I thank everybody for coming out. Thank you again for the interactive questions. Many of you were able to complete your use case. Awesome. And everybody have a great day and rest of your week. Thank you.